Good day, students. You're welcome once again to the third topic in CRP 304 Principles of Horticultural Crops series. I still remain your facilitator, Alawudi Yetunde, and today we'll be talking about the factors of agricultural production, or rather, factors of horticultural production, and these include land, labor, inputs, market, and finance. Also, we'll be talking about the practices used in the production of horticultural crops, ranging from the land preparation to watering, fertilizer application, mulching, weeding or weed management, pest and disease control, pruning, staking, and finally harvesting. This week promises to be an interesting one, and we'll be talking extensively about all these practices except for harvesting, which is a whole topic on its own. I want you to sit back, listen with your pen and paper so you'll be able to jot down the important points, and I want you to be concentrated upon this lecture of today. It promises, like I said, to be an exciting one, and let us go on a journey ride. Thank you and stay blessed. You're welcome once again to the third topic in the series of principles of horticultural crops. And like I said in the previous slide, my name has not changed. It's still Alawudi Yetunde, and my email address is on the screen. As a means of introduction, we want to talk about the factors affecting horticultural crop production, and these include land, labor, inputs, market, and finance. So there are 5 factors that affect horticultural crop production: land, labor, inputs, market, and finance. One after the other. The first factor we'll be talking about is the land. And land is a free gift of nature found where, and on the land you can find the soil, water, minerals, etc. So land is a free gift of nature, and on it on land there is soil, there is water, there are minerals, and so many other things. The vegetation, the rocks, mountains, everything is on the land. So the soil that is meant for agricultural production should have a good texture and should be deep enough so that it will be able to withhold the roots of the plants, and it also has to possess a minimal resistance to root penetration. So it should be deep so that the roots can penetrate and tap from the nutrients that are in the soil. It should also have a good texture. The best texture for vegetables and fruits is the sandy loam, and your soil should also be able to retain moisture and nutrients, and should also be easy to till in case you want to practice the mechanical form of agriculture. It should be able to be easy to till so that the machines can work on it freely, and the soil should also drain freely. It should not be the kind of soil that will be cloggy or sticky when water is in it. So it should be well aerated, drain freely, and also it's important to note that the pH that is best for fruits and vegetables is between 5.5 to 6.5. That is slightly acidic pH. Also, elevation should be encouraged because this will allow for proper drainage of the soil and also to avoid erosion. So the best kind of land is the gentle slope, and it is best for fruits and vegetables. So these are the characteristics of a good land for horticultural crop production. Factor we'll be talking about is labor, and labor means the physical or mental energy that is required in any production. So you're talking about physical work using your body and mental work using your mind. That is what is required for any form of production. For a larger operation, labor is needed for fruit harvest, for planting, for pruning, and so many other farm operations. So labor can come in form of man, it can come in form of machinery, it can come in form of labor, any form, skilled or unskilled, so to put it. So a commercial orchard should be located where seasonal labor is readily available and affordable. Yes, it's important that it has to be affordable because you don't want to use your whole resources on labor. You need to get gain at the end of the day. So your labor should be readily available and also affordable. And also farm operations from weeding to harvesting and processing require labor, and this labor also should be readily available to avoid loss of yield or spoilage of the produce, because when harvesting is when the fruits and vegetables are ripe for harvesting and you leave them on the field, then it will result in spoilage, and this can result in loss of your income, loss of yield, and loss of money in general. So the labor should be on time, it should be prompt, and it should be easily affordable. That is about labor. The third point, which is the inputs, these are materials that are required for a successful production. And these materials include the seed or the seedlings that you want to plant, the fertilizers, herbicide, machines, insecticides, everything that is needed for a successful production, which are used for fruit and vegetables production. And these inputs must also be readily available and affordable, and of course it must have it must be meaningful in the case of fruit orchard and vegetable farm to be achieved. So it has to be affordable and readily available also. So that is about the input. And the point we'll be talking about is the market. Generally, when you plant your trees in the house, you want some fruits for home consumption. But however, when, for example, an orange tree, when it starts fruiting, you get so many oranges. And when you are done eating, you have surplus, you have excess, you can as well turn it to money, as in you can sell it. And that is a source of income for the consumer. And in the case of the large scale farmers which want to serve the public, then you have to get into marketing strategies. Okay, marketing strategies so that your products will be able to hit the market and people will be able to get them at an affordable price. So these marketing strategies should be carefully considered, and also processing is important because dried fruits can store for a long period of time. So if you process your fruits, you turn your oranges to juice, it will even get a higher value. You get a higher value for your product. So if you want to sell it fresh produce are usually highly perishable, but if you process it, then you can get more money for your product. So that is where marketing comes in. Point here is finance. Finance is also a critical factor in any production, and it is required because you need money to start your business. You need money to start your orchard business. You require money to pay for labor and also for rent. So sometimes you can use your family for labor, but for a large expanse of land, it's not usually enough. So you have to hire labor, and you need finance for that. And in commercial enterprise also, you need labor that will come over, sleep, and then you pay them at the end of the day. So finance is important, it's a very critical factor in any production. Having, having said those factors of production, I have a short class activity for you. And the first question is list 5 factors about horticultural crop production. And I will want you to explain any 3 of the factors that is listed above. I'll give you 10 seconds to do that. Moving on, we'll talk about the practices used in the production of horticultural crops. And it's important to note that from the beginning to the end of any production process, there are a series of other practices that should come to play. And the first one here is the land preparation. Next is watering. The third is fertilizer application. Fourth is mulching. Fifth is weeding or weed management. Then the sixth is the pest and disease control. 7 is pruning. 8 staking, and the 9th practice here is harvesting. However, we'll be talking about the first to 8 points, but the 9th point, which is the harvesting, we'll talk about that one in the next topic because it's a whole topic on its own. So the first one we'll be talking about now is land preparation. Land preparation for sowing involves land clearing and tillage. So you can clear your land manually using a machete or a hoe, and you can also do it on a large expanse of land mechanically using your bulldozers, your plows, your tractors, and the like. Also, you can clear the land chemically using your non-selective herbicides or using selective herbicides. That is if you want to practice the no tillage system. That means you don't want to use any form of mechanical or any form of machine on your piece of land. You have to control the weeds there by using herbicides. So that is the way you can prepare your land for production. Also, when you are finished cutting the vegetation on the land, you gather it together and then you burn. So bush burning is important, but it's important also that you should do it carefully. You want to burn the bushes, but you don't want to destroy the nutrient on the soil. So uncontrolled bush burning will affect the soil structure, but if it is controlled, you help gather and get rid of excess debris on the field. And except in mechanical land clearing, farmers retain the bigger trees. You know, when you get a piece of land, you see some trees there that have economic value, like the cola tree, you can see oil palm tree, you know, on such land. So you may not remove them because they can still be a source of income to you. So you can save them and use them later. Another form of land preparation is the tillage. And after clearing your land, you want to till it. And tilling simply means turning the topsoil. Okay, you are turning the soil, you are turning it the other way. You are putting the topsoil under and then you are putting the one under on top. So you can either do it manually using your hoe, or you can do it mechanically using the plow. So what the primary tillage does is that it loosens the soil. It breaks up the bigger lumps of soil, so it makes it loosened. And you can also mix your fertilizer or plant material with it at this point. Also, after doing the primary tillage, you may go further to even loosen the soil the more using the secondary tillage facility, and this produces a finer soil structure, texture, and your you can do your secondary tillage using equipment like the moldboard plow, the disc plow, the harrow. These are things that you use, these are machines that you use for your secondary tillage. They make the soil to be finer tilled. Okay, you use your dibble, your hoe, your rotary tillers. These are machines that you use for your secondary tillage. However, if you don't want to tamper with the structure of the soil, then you practice the no tillage farming, which involves growing your crops without any form of disturbance of the soil structure, and you can also control your weeds using herbicides. Now you have cleared the land, you have already tilled it. The next thing you will do is to plant. The land is now ready for planting, and you plant seeds. So seeds of many crops can be planted directly into the soil that you have prepared, into the plots that you have prepared. And direct seed sowing is achieved by broadcasting. You broadcast like you are throwing it, around. Then in no specific order, especially for small seeds like your rice, you broadcast it, you just throw it in no specific order, no spacing, nothing. And you can drill holes and put your seeds in it. This works for bigger seeds. You give it a space, and then you plant, you drill your holes and you drop your seed inside, cover it lightly, and on a large expanse of land you can use mechanical planters. These are available, and they perform operations like seed sowing, fertilizer application, pesticide application. They do it simultaneously. So if you're not using seeds and you're using your vegetative parts of the plant, then you have to dig the soil with a cutlass at a reasonable depth, and then you put the vegetative parts inside and cover it lightly. However, some crops require pre-nursery treatment like the oil palm and tomato, and you have to raise them up in the nursery for some weeks before transplanting into the field. So this transplanting is usually done very early in the morning so that you will not stress the plant, and you have to protect the roots of the plant so that it will not suffer this kind of shock when it is being transplanted. Now the seeds are in the soil, you need copious watering. So watering is the next on the list. You have to water copiously, and you do so till the seedlings or the vegetative material or the seeds have been established. So where there is no water, then you have to practice irrigation, because irrigation is the artificial application of water on a crop field, especially in the dry season when there is no rainfall. So copious watering is required immediately after transplanting to establish the seedlings. Also, is worthy of note that proper irrigation leads to increased yields. So you get increased yields, you get healthier plants, you get bigger plants, and over irrigation should also be avoided. So too much of everything is bad. If the water is too much, then it will just clog the soil. There will not be the soil will not be able to breathe, and it will cause the plants to be suffocated. So poor drainage also will cause water logging. Okay, so the soil should be well drained. The water should be able to drain freely in the soil. It should not cause water logging, and it can also increase the acidity of the land. So poor drainage should be avoided, and the techniques of water of watering include the manual system using your buckets. Maybe you have a source of water like a stream beside your farm. You just take your bucket and then you fetch the water and put it on the plant. You can also practice sub irrigation, that's the seepage kind of irrigation, or the lateral move. These are different types of irrigation system: the sprinkler, the drip, or the trickle irrigation, localized irrigation. They are all various techniques of irrigation. The next thing you do is to apply your fertilizer. So what are fertilizers? They are simply chemicals. They could be organic or inorganic materials, containing plant nutrients. So what they do is that they enrich the soil so that the roots will be able to take more nutrients and make it available to the plant. So you are adding um, supplements to the soil to increase the fertility that has been lost. And there are different types of fertilizer. We have the nitrogen fertilizers, we have the phosphorus and the potassium fertilizers. Fertilizers also may be applied by the broadcasting method, just throwing it around, the row replacement, banding or ringing. That you form a ring around the plant and then you apply it, because the fertilizer doesn't have to come in direct contact with the plant or else it's going to burn it. So you have to leave some centimeters apart from the plant. So it's better you put it by the side or by drilling a hole and then putting it there. And for the micronutrients, they are usually applied as foliar sprays, so they spray them to the target crops. And organic fertilization, that involves manuring, that's using organic manure, especially the aging farms. You use your green manure, you use your compost waste, kitchen waste, use your plant, decomposed plant waste, animal dung. These are things they have to, of course, decompose very well. You can't use them directly or else they will scorch the plant. So it has to be well decomposed. Also, liming is also a form of fertilizer, and it is done by applying lime to the soil to increase the soil pH and then improve the conditions for growth for both crops and microorganisms. The fourth point we'll be talking about here is mulching. And mulching simply means the covering of the ground in the crop field with organic or inorganic materials. So when you are covering the crop, the plant, you are covering the field, sorry, with dead leaves or straw or organic materials or inorganic materials as the case may be, like stones, like nylon. All what you're doing is that you're protecting the soil from degradation and you are ensuring that the soil is sustainable for agriculture. So you are preserving the soil structure and you are trying to prevent excess sunlight from hitting the surface of the soil. So organic mulch materials, like I said, can be organic, like the straw, leaf litter, weed-free compost, and inorganic mulch materials include your paper and the stones, biodegradables, plastic, nylon, to use to cover the soil and prevent weed control in greenhouses. So this is what is usually done. Now we'll be going to the weed management, and there are three approaches to this. The first is the preventive approach, the second is the eradication approach, and the third is the control approach. by one. We are talking about the preventive approach, and just like whereas the word is, if you want to prevent something, that means it doesn't have to show itself or establish itself before you talk of controlling it. So you are trying to prevent it, and um, methods include preventive approach method include plant quarantine, animal quarantine, fallow management, farm sanitation, keeping your farm clean all the time, roguing. When you see an infected plant, you uproot it and throw it far away. And preventing weed seedling, as soon as you see any weed, you just pull it out. Choice of variety and field, you use the field that is relatively clean of debris, and you also use your planting materials should also be free, disease free, weed free, you know. And then you plant at the correct time, you harvest at the correct time. These are preventive ways of um, weed management. Like if I see in this box here, weed free seed, competitive crops, crop rotation, and diversity, these are ways that you can prevent weed from destroying your crops. The second method here is the eradication approach, and this involves complete removal of the weed species from the infested land. So complete removal, and is achievable in non-agronomic situation. Yeah, because it's not easy. You can never. It's very difficult to see a land that is completely free of weed. So it is not usually easy, and the reasons for this is that getting rid of weeds is usually very expensive. So the eradication approach is good, but it has more disadvantages than advantages. However, the control method is like the best, and this involves suppression of weeds. You are suppressing weed populations to a tolerable level that renders cropping situations economically safe for agricultural production. So what you're doing is the weeds are there, but they are not disturbing your crops. They are there, of course, not in large numbers, very few, and they are not disturbing the yield or disturbing any process of your crops. And there are different methods. It is best method for weed management. There are different methods of this control approach. We have the cultural method, the mechanical method, the chemical, and the biological control method. The cultural method involves the practice that is adopted by the farmer, okay, to his crop, and it involves your farming system, basically mixed farming, crop rotation, adopting the best farming system that is suitable for the particular crop that you want to plant. And the mechanical weed um, control involves using direct physical means for removal or suppression of weeds. When you see weed, you will pull it by your hand, or you use your hoe to pull it out. You are doing it with little machines here and there. That is mechanical weed control. And the chemical weed control, which is of course the most common, involves the use of herbicides at toxic concentrations to kill or suppress weed growth. So you're mixing these chemicals in certain measurements, and you're using it to suppress the weed growth. Biological weed control is the use of natural enemies or bioagents of weed in weed control. So the natural enemies could be predators like fish, insects, snails, or parasites like nematodes and plants. and could also be pathogens like the fungi, bacteria, or viruses. These are biological ways of controlling weed. What are herbicides? Herbicides are inorganic or organic compounds which may be selective or non-selective. So they are chemicals that you use to control your weed on your field, and they can be applied pre-plant, that means before you plant. There are some that you apply on the field before you plant. Then there are some also that you can apply after you have planted but before the plant emerges. So you call it the pre-emergence herbicide. And there are some also that you can use when the plant is fully established. That's the post-emergence or post-maturity herbicide. So these herbicides come in diverse ways, diverse forms. Some are powders, some are concentrates, some are flowables, granules, liquids, pellets, suspensions, you can name them. So, um, however, a major disadvantage of chemical weed control is insufficient specification of chemicals. You know, people tend to overuse it and abuse it and cause all manner of environmental hazards. So it's important to know the amount that you're going to mix with your water and then apply your herbicides. So that is all about herbicides. Now, the fourth form of weed management, which is the integrated weed management, and which is the best so far, talks about using two or more weed management systems at low inputs to obtain a level of weed suppression that is superior to the one that you are using before. So you are combining like two or more methods, like the cultural and chemical, or biological and chemical. You are combining it so that you can keep your weeds under a very suppressed form, and it ensures that the weed interference is kept below threshold economic levels, okay, so that at the end of the day you are not just harvesting weed, you are harvesting your crops, and everybody's happy, the farmer is happy, the land is happy, everybody's happy at the end of the day. That is what integrated weed management is all about. Now briefly we want to talk about the pest and disease control. So we have talked about the weed control. So pests and pathogens are very serious, and they can reduce your crop to zero. That is why it's important that you control them, and they cause damage to crops. These pests could be arthropods, they could be insects or non-insects. The insects could be winged or non-winged. So the insects, based on their mouth parts, some of them are the chewing type, they chew, some are the sucking type. So different forms of insects, and the non-arthropods, those ones talk about the slugs, the snails, eelworms, etc. And talking about microorganisms which cause diseases like the viruses, the bacteria, fungi, and mycoplasma. They cause various diseases such as anthracnose, your leaf spot, the mosaic virus disease, bacterial wilt, blast, stem rust. They are all diseases that should be controlled if you don't want to get a total loss of crop production. The methods of pest and disease control include the physical method, cultural method, biological method, the chemical method, and legislative measures. So the cultural method also talks about your crop rotation, your burning, your soil cultivation, soil drainage, everything has to be in check so that you will not be breeding pests and diseases instead of breeding your crops. And also the sowing time, you plant at a time when the pests are not active, so that your by the time your plants will have grown, they will have passed the stage where they can destroy the crop. So this sowing time is also very important. And you can also use chemicals to control your pests, and these chemicals are called pesticides. And also legislative measures include seed certification schemes, and this prevents you from bringing in disease plants into the country. So you have to have your certification laws so that you don't bring in crops that are diseased into the country. You don't start transferring disease from one country to the other. So it's important that these officers, they inspect the crops, they check them. Any crop that is coming into the country, any food, any kind of plant-based material should be properly checked, and make sure that they are free from every form of pests and diseases before they are allowed into the country. So that's the legislative measure. And the seventh point here is the pruning. And pruning just simply talks about the practice of cutting or removing unwanted or diseased branch of shrubs, hedges, and trees to maintain this regular shape, and prevent the plant from diseases, and prevent the diseases from spreading to other parts of the plant. So like you can see in this picture here, this is a man holding a secateur. That is what is used to prune, and he's pruning, he's cutting this branch off. So the part that doesn't produce fruit or anything, or that is old, should be cut off carefully and neatly. So pruning is usually done to produce or to regenerate new plants from the old trees. So pruning is also an important practice. If one we'll be talking about, which is the final one we'll be talking about today, is the staking. And this is simply a process of providing support for plant stems of vines. We are providing support for the plant stems of the vines, and is commonly practiced in tomato and yam production. So in the yam, staking enhances crop leaf exposure to sunlight. So when the leaves are straightened and they are upright like that, they can capture sunlight, and then they produce bigger roots, bigger tubers under. And in tomato, staking prevents lodging, that prevents the plant from falling, and also the fruits that are formed on the floor. Okay, when you stake them, you tend to raise the fruits up so that they will not get rotten on the floor. So that is what staking is all about. As your class activity, I want you to list any 5 practices used in the production of horticultural crops. And the second question is you try and explain any 3 out of the 5 that you mentioned above. And the third question is, how can weeds be controlled on the land cultivated for horticultural crops? And how can you control pests and diseases in horticultural crop production? And the fifth question is, what are herbicides? So I'll just give you 15 seconds to think about it and come up with something. That we have come to the end of the facilitation for this week. I hope you have learned a lot, starting from the factors of crop production, horticultural crop production. We talked about land, labor, inputs. We talked about market and finance. And then we talked about the factors affecting crop production. Talked about land preparation. We talked about watering, staking, pruning, weed management, pest and disease management. We talked about so many other things. So I hope you had a nice time because I really enjoyed myself. So thank you and see you in the other class, which is next week. God bless you.